Okay, Judges 7 as we continue with Judges. This is about Gideon's 300. Then Jerubbaal, who was Gideon, and all the people that were with him rose up early and pitched beside the well of Harod, so that the host of the Midianites were on the north side of them and by the hill of Melhe in the valley. Jerubbaal means Baal will contend. Remember that it was given to him, Gideon, as a nickname earlier. And the Lord said unto Gideon, the people that are with thee are too many for me to give the Midianites into their hands, lest Israel vaunt themselves up against me, saying, mine own hand hath saved me. Okay, God's going to send you into battle, one way or another, and our battles today are spiritual, and you're going to be outnumbered, and you're going to be outgunned, and everything else, and that's how God wants it, so that He gets the glory. It's easy to build a church building if I am a billionaire. It's not so easy if I'm a pastor with a bunch of people that don't have a whole lot of money. Then you know God is doing it. Hopefully it's not my own pastoral manipulation. That goes on too. I'm not saying here. But God in our lives and in our churches will have us outnumbered so He gets the glory. It's easy for me to walk down that aisle because I'm healthy. It's not so easy for a person in poor health. I mean, we could go on and on about this. Now therefore go, verse 3, go to proclaim in the ears of the people, saying, whosoever is fearful and afraid, let him return and depart early from Mount Gilad. And there returned of the people 22,000, and there remained 10,000. So obviously they started out with 32,000. Now, let's go to Deuteronomy 20. Verse 1. When thou goest out to battle against thine enemies, and seest horses and chariots and people more than thou, be not afraid of them. For the Lord thy God is with thee, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. And it shall be, when ye are come nigh unto the battle, that the priest shall approach and speak unto the people, and shall say unto them, hear, O Israel, ye approach this day unto battle against your enemies. Let not your hearts faint, fear not, and do not tremble, neither be ye terrified because of them. For the Lord your God is He that goeth with you, to fight for you against your enemies, to save you. And the officers shall speak unto the people, saying, what man is there that hath built a new house, and hath not dedicated it? Let him go and return to his house, lest he die in the battle, and another man dedicate it. Point number 2, and what man is he that hath planted a vineyard, and hath not yet eaten of it? Let him also go and return unto his house, lest he die in the battle, and another man eat of it. Point 3, and what man is there that hath betrothed a wife, and hath not taken her? Let him go and return unto his house, lest he die in the battle, and another man take her. Point 4, this is what's going on with Gideon. And the officers shall speak further unto the people, and they shall say, what man is there that is fearful and faint-hearted? Let him go and return unto his house, lest his brethren's heart faint as well as his heart. And it shall be, when the officers have made an end of speaking unto the people, that they shall make captains of the armies to lead the people. You don't want people that are scared, because that type of thing spreads quickly. Okay? Lest his brethren's heart faint as well as his heart, because he's going to say something, and then someone else is going to say something, and on it goes like dominoes. Well, what does that tell you about the draft? I keep out of politics. But Israel, when all they're fighting, if you were scared, you didn't have to fight. This is all you had to say is, I'm scared. That's it. You didn't have to go. Judges 7:4. And the Lord said unto Gideon, the people are yet too many. Bring them down unto the water, and I will try them for thee there. And it shall be that of whom I say unto thee, this shall go with thee, the same shall go with thee. And of whomsoever I say unto thee, this shall not go with thee, the same shall not go. So we brought down the people unto the water. And the Lord said unto Gideon, everyone that lappeth of the water with his tongue, as a dog lappeth, him shalt thou set by himself. likewise everyone that bows down upon his knees to drink. And the number of them that lapped, putting their hand to their mouth, were 300 men. But all the rest of the people bowed down upon their knees to drink water. And the Lord said unto Gideon, By the 300 men that lap will I save you, and deliver the Midianites into thine hand, and let all the other people go every man into his place. So the people took victuals in their hand and their trumpets, and he sent all the rest of Israel, every man unto his tent, and retained those 300 men. And the host of Midian was beneath him in the valley. What's going on? Does anyone know? I mean, why? What's special about the 300? Drinking water. Yes?
Well, supposedly the 300 fellas that's lapping, they've got their eyes on around them, on their surroundings, keeping an eye on everything in case they get attacked.
Exactly. I'll demonstrate, and if you're looking out there on YouTube, you won't see this. This was demonstrated in a sermon in a church I went to. Pastor got down like this. Okay, here's how most of the people drank. You can't see up, can you? 300 went like this. They had their eyes open. There was an enemy nearby. Those men were the ones worthy to go into battle. Verse 9, And it came to pass the same night that the Lord said unto him, Arise, get thee down unto the host, for I have delivered it unto thine hand. And Gideon doesn't say, I'm doubting, I'm scared. God says, But if thou fear to go down, go thou and Phuha thy servant down to the host. And thou shalt hear what they say, and afterward shalt thine hands be strengthened to go down to the host. See, again, it's faith to faith, like last week. Gideon's not even saying, God, show me something. God knows Gideon's got reason to be scared. He's got 300 people left, and he's going to take on this host. Then Aaron went down with Phuha his servant unto the outside of the armed men that were in the host. And the Midianites and the Amalekites and all the children of the east lay along in the valley like grasshoppers for multitude. And their camels were without number as the sand by the seaside for a multitude. Here's what you typically see, and you'll see it in Samuel and Kings and on and on. Where are the enemy? Or where is the enemy? The south, generally not. That's Egypt. Israel did have a couple of confrontations with Egypt when you get into Kings, but usually it was not a problem, despite Pharaoh Necho taking the king of Judah and all that. Generally, they weren't implacable enemies of Israel throughout their existence. The north, Syria and Assyria, but a lot of people to the east, the Ammonites, the Moabites, the Edomites, whoever was out there. You never had a problem from the west. Anyone know why? Can you tell me why? Because that was the Mediterranean Sea. People would have had to be really good swimmers to attack from there, or come with a navy. Verse 13, And when Gideon was come, behold, there was a man that told a dream unto his fellow, and said, Behold, I dreamed a dream, and lo, a cake of barley bread tumbled into the host of Midian, and came unto a tent, and smote it that it fell, and overturned it that the tent lay along. And his fellow answered and said, This is nothing else save the sword of Gideon the son of Joash, a man of Israel, for into his hand hath God delivered Midian and all the host. And it was so, when Gideon heard the telling of the dream and the interpretation thereof, that he worshipped, and returned into the host of Israel, and said, Arise, for the Lord hath delivered into your hand the host of Midian. And he divided the 300 men into 3 companies, and he put a trumpet in every man's hand, with empty pitchers and lamps within the pitchers. And he said unto them, Look on me, and do likewise. And behold, when I come to the outside of the camp, it shall be that as I do, so shall ye do. When I blow with the trumpet, and I and all that are with me, then blow ye the trumpets also on every side of all the camp, and say, The sword of the Lord and of Gideon. And the sword right here is in italics, which means it isn't there in the Bible. They added it, and I'm reading King James here. They added it to help clarify. But really, it's just of the Lord and of Gideon. Later on, it mentions the sword. So Gideon and all the 100 men that were with him came onto the outside of the camp in the beginning of the middle watch. The beginning of the middle watch. When do you attack militarily? Apparently at the beginning of the watch. You want to know why? Because Israel did that to Egypt in 1967. Israel knew when the Egyptians were changing their watches. And the idea was, Egypt would think, okay, they haven't attacked today, we're okay. And then they changed their watch, and that's when the Israeli warplanes came down and destroyed the Egyptian airfields, and then their airplanes beat Egypt in one day by destroying their air force. But part of their strategy was, let the Egyptians think, nothing's going to happen, they haven't attacked yet. It's time to change the watch. This is what I read somewhere. It's a whole lot of strategy that was involved with that war. And they had but newly set the watch, and they blew the trumpets and brake the pitchers that were in their hands. And the 3 companies blew the trumpets and brake the pitchers and held the lamps in their left hands and the trumpets in their right hands to blow withal. And they cried, now you see sword, the sword of the Lord and of Gideon. And they stood every man in his place round about the camp, and all the host ran and cried and fled. And yes, folks, these are the days before we had street lights everywhere. You ever got out on the street at night and there's someone that doesn't have his headlights on? Because there's so many street lights. If you're in a parking lot, at a restaurant or something, you might just start your car up. Now, mine, the lights come on automatically in the dark. But you might just start your car, but not even think it just, you have to remind yourself, oh, it's night, I should turn my headlights on. Because there's so many lights around. This is like ever going on a camping trip when there are no lights, you can really see the stars. This is the way it was. And they stood every man in his place round about the camp, and the host ran and cried and fled. And the 300 blew the trumpets, and the Lord set every man's sword against his fellow. Even throughout all the house, it was mass confusion. They were killing each other. The enemy was killing each other. And the host fled to Bethshittah and to his Zehairat, and into the border of Avel Mahola, and unto Tabat. And the men of Israel gathered themselves out of Naphtali, and out of Asher, and out of Al Menashe, and pursued after the Midianites. And Gideon sent messengers. Now, here's where we have to always keep our eye on Ephraim. Remember that Joseph brought Menashe and Ephraim to his father Jacob. Jacob had gone blind like his father Isaac had done. Remember the crisscross for the blessings. Jacob put Ephraim, the second-born, over Menashe, the firstborn. That goes against the custom of the day. And you'll see throughout these, here and later on, especially in Judges, just how Ephraim is big and powerful in how they start turning against their buddies. And Gideon sent messengers throughout all Mount Ephraim, saying, come down against the Midianites and take before them the waters unto Beth-Bahah and Jordan. Then all the men of Ephraim gathered themselves together and took the waters unto Beth-Bahah and Jordan. And they took 2 princes of the Midianites, Oheb and Zeb. Zeb by the means wolf. If you ever meet an Israeli named Zeb, that's what it means. And they slew Oheb upon the rock of Oheb, and Zeb they slew at the winepress of Zeb, and pursued Midian, and brought the heads of Oheb and Zeb to Gideon on the other side Jordan. So far, so good. And the men of Ephraim said unto him, why hast thou served us thus, that thou callest us not, when thou wentest to fight with the Midianites? And they did chide with him sharply. Remember, the loyalties those days were not to your nation, which hardly existed. They were to your tribe, or perhaps to other tribes, if you had some type of confederacy going, like Levi and Simeon did at the beginning of the book of Judges. Remember, Levi and Simeon in real life were full brothers, not half brothers. And kind of the Civil War was like that. You fought with your state. Different regiments from different states. And he said unto them, now he's getting diplomatic, trying to prevent the civil war, which he manages to do. And he said unto them, what have I done now in comparison of you? Is not the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the vintage of Abiezer? See, Gideon was from Abiezer. Vintage is the best stuff. The gleaning is what's left over after, Basically, you went and you picked your grapes, and then you weren't supposed to actually pick up the gleanings. You're supposed to leave them for the poor. That was the law of Moses. They would go and kind of get what you missed. So he's saying, your worst is better than our best. He builds them up and prevents the civil war. God had delivered into your hands the princes of Midian, Ohab and Zeb. And what was I able to do in comparison of you? Then their anger was abated toward him when he had said that. See, he de-escalated the situation. I've done that in the prison as a guard, correctional officer. You de-escalate. In other words, you don't let the inmates tell you what to do, but when they get mad about something, you talk to them in such a way that calms them down. I've managed to do that. Judges, okay. Ephraim helps the second major judge, Ehud, in Judges 3:27. Remember, when we were in Judges 3, you see Othniel, just a couple of verses about him, and then you see Ehud. Ehud is the one who takes out the dagger and slays the fat man. Okay? The pagan king.
Left-handed.
Huh?
He was left-handed.
Yeah, he was. Did I say he was right-handed? No. He was left-handed, pulled the dagger out of his right side. And Judges 3, okay, first you got Othniel, the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother, delivering them from Cushan-Rishathaim, king of Mesopotamia. And then you have Eglon, king of Moab. Maybe he was shaped like an egg, I don't know. He was a very fat man. And anyway, he was assassinated. Ephraim, okay, if you actually look at this, in verse, let's see, you don't have to turn to Judges 3:27, and it came to pass when he was come, that was Ehud, the assassin, that he blew a trumpet in the mountain of Ephraim, and the children of Israel went down with him from the mountain and before them. See, Ephraim helped them. Now Ephraim's starting to argue with other people. It'll get worse later. The fourth major judge, Gideon, is the center of the chiasm of 7 judges. Remember those sheets I gave you? Okay? Gideon's at the center. It's good until Gideon. Gideon's a turning point. And this is on page 2, by the way. Remember, it's 2 sides that I gave you. And then you have to go up the column on page 2. Okay, you can see the 1, 2, 3, 4. Othniel, Ehud, Deborah, even though it was Yael that put the tent peg through Sisera's head. And now you see Gideon. It's a turning point. There's a great victory. But Ephraim, at this point, he argues with them. But at least he de-escalates. I mean, internecine warfare, civil war, is rather common back here in the book of Judges. It's not just the people on the outside that are bothering the children of Israel. They're fighting with each other. Okay, so later we'll see the 6th major judge, Jephthah, who kills thousands of Ephraimites. Judges 8:4. And Gideon came to Jordan and passed over, he and the 300 men that were with him, faint yet pursuing them. They've already got 2 of the kings. Okay? And you can see them, Zeb and Ohab. Okay? Brought the heads. You know, when your head's off, you're dead. But the battle's not over yet. And Gideon came to Jordan and passed over, he and the 300 men that were with him, faint yet pursuing them. And he said unto the men of Sukkot, which by the way means booths or tabernacles, but it was a city, give, I pray you, loaves of bread unto the people that follow me, for they be faint, and I am pursuing after Seba and Salmunna, kings of Midian. And the princes of Sukkot said, are the hands of Zalmunna and Salmunna now in thine hand, that we should give bread unto thine enemy? And Gideon said, by the way, whether it's a Z or a tz, you have to look it up in the Hebrew. I'm trying to remember which ones they are. I think one was with a Z, one was just a tz, like, I hate the word, but Nazi, That's the phoneme. And they're both in Z's when they get transliterated. Therefore, when the Lord hath delivered Zebah and Zalmunna into mine hand, then I will tear your flesh with the thorns of the wilderness and with briars. That's nice. Okay, they fight with each other. And he went up thence to Penuel, it's also called Peniel or Peniel, and spake unto them likewise. And the men of Penuel answered him as the men of Sukkot had answered him. And he spake also unto the men of Penuel, saying, when I am come again in peace, I will break down this tower. Now, Zebah and Zalmunna were in Karkor, and their host with them, about 15,000 men. All that were left of all the hosts of the children of the east, for there fell 120,000 men that drew the sword. Get 120,000 dead, you get 15,000 still alive. But you got to get them all. And Gideon went up by the way of them that dwelt in the tents on the east of Nobah and Yokbah, and smote the host, for the host was secure. And when Zebah and Zalmunna fled, he pursued after them, and took the 2 kings of Midian, Zebah and Zalmunna, and discomfited all the host. And Gideon the son of Joash returned from battle before the sun was up, and caught a young man of the men of Sukkot, and inquired of him, and he described unto him the princes of Sukkot, and the elders thereof, even 70 men. That's 77, good old King James English. And he came unto the men of Sukkot, and said, behold, Zebah and Zalmunna, with whom ye did upbraid me, saying, are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in thine hand, that we should give bread unto thy men that are weary? And he took the elders of the city and thorns of the wilderness and briars, and with them he taught the men of Sukkot. I like learning, but I'm glad I wasn't in class that day, because that kind of teaching. And he beat down the tower of Penuel and slew the men of the city. So there's already civil war going on. Then he said unto Zebah and Zalmunna, what manner of men were they whom ye slew at Tabor? And they answered, as thou art, so were they. Each one resembled the children of a king. And he said, they were my brethren, even the sons of my mother. As the Lord liveth, if ye had saved them alive, I would not slay you. And he said unto Yetah, his firstborn, up and slay them. But the youth drew not his sword, for he feared, because he was yet a youth. Then Zebah and Zalmunna said, rise thou and fall upon us, for as the man is, so is his strength. And Gideon arose and slew Zebah and Zalmunna, and took away the ornaments that were on their camels' necks. Then the men of Israel said unto Gideon, rule thou over us, both thou and thy son's sons also, in other words, start a dynasty, for thou hast delivered us from the hand of Midian. And Gideon said unto them, I will not rule over you. Didn't George Washington say, I don't want to be king? Neither shall my son rule over you. The Lord shall rule over you. And Gideon said unto them, I would desire a request of you, that ye would give me every man the earrings of his prey. For they had golden earrings, because they were Ishmaelites. And they answered, we willingly give them. And they spread a garment, and did cast therein every man the earrings of his prey. And the weight of the golden earrings that he requested was 1,700 shekels of gold, beside ornaments and collars and purple raiment that was on the kings of Midian, and beside the chains that were about their camels' necks. And Gideon made an ephod thereof, and put it in his city, even in Ophrah. And all Israel went thither a whoring after it, which thing became a snare unto Gideon and to his house. Thus was Midian subdued before the children of Israel, so they lifted up their heads no more. And the country was in quietness 40 years in the days of Gideon. And Jerubbaal the son of Joash, of course that's Gideon, went and dwelt in his own house. And Gideon had 70 sons of his body begotten, for he had many wives. He's acting like a king. He doesn't want to be king, but he's certainly acting like one. And his concubine that was in Shechem, which by the way means shoulder, she also bare him a son, whom he called Avimelech, my father is king. And Gideon the son of Joash died in a good old age. That's a good time to die, by the way. And was buried in the sepulchre of Joash his father, in Ophrah of the Abiezrites. And it came to pass as soon as Gideon was dead that the children of Israel turned again and went a-whoring after Baalim and made Baal Perit their god. Now, Baal Perit means Baal of the covenant. Remember, Baal was a pagan god. The children of Israel remembered not the Lord their God, who had delivered them out of the hands of all their enemies on every side. Neither showed they kindness to the house of Jerubbaal, namely Gideon, according to all the goodness which he had showed unto Israel. Now, again, it's a turning point. He stops idolatry at first. There's tribal cooperation. They do argue with Ephraim. He won't be king, but he's naming his son Avimelech, which means my father is king. He acts like a king with many wives, and he gets people into idolatry later. And notice that there's no rest after Gideon. We've seen in these other cycles, they had rest, they had rest, they had rest. In fact, I think on those sheets, if you turn over to the other side, after Othniel, the first major judge, rest after victory, 40 years. After Ehud, the assassin who stabbed the fat man, Eglon, king of Moab, they had rest 80 years. Now Shamgar, it's only a verse or two about him, and it's not even listed about rest after the victory. After Deborah, 40 years. Rest after Gideon, 40 years. I don't see where it says 40 years. I think that's, what did I do in writing that? Gideon. Years of oppression were 7 years. Rest after victory. I don't think that, I think I gotta check that. It says rest after victory, 40 years. Oh no, that's 40, yeah. Oh, the country was in quietness 40 years in the days of Gideon. See, it's not after he died. Rest after victory was 40 years. Okay? So there was, but really after he died, it says nothing about rest. Things are getting worse. We can go into chapter 9. Avimelech. And Avimelech, the son of Jerubbaal, went to Shechem unto his mother's brethren. Okay? And communed with them and all the family of the house of his mother's father, saying, now remember, Gideon was living in Shechem. His concubine was in Shechem. So she's got this one kid, Avimelech. She's a concubine. She's not one of his many wives. And Avimelech, the son of Jerubbaal, went to Shechem unto his mother's brethren, the mother's that concubine, and communing with them and with all the family of the house of his mother's father, saying, speak, I pray you, in the ears of all the men of Shechem, whether it is better for you either that all the sons of Jerubbaal, which are 70 persons, reign over you, or that one reign over you. Remember also that I am your bone and your flesh. And his mother's brethren spake of him in the ears of all the men of Shechem all these words, and their hearts inclined to follow Avimelech, but they said, he is our brother. And they gave him 70 pieces of silver out of the house of Baal Perit, wherewith Avimelech hired vain and light persons which followed him. And he went unto his father's house at Ophrah, and slew his brethren, the sons of Jerubbaal. In other words, these were half-brothers, being 70 persons upon one stone. They were the sons of legitimate wives. By the way, when people keep saying the Bible had, the Bible, it's one marriage is between one man and one woman. No. There are plenty of people in the Bible who had multiple wives. It should be. And it never in the Bible doesn't even preach against homosexual marriage because that doesn't even exist. I don't care what the U.S. Supreme Court says. It does not exist any more than aliens from Mars. It's just something we write into law these days. But there are plenty of people in the Bible legitimately married to several wives, including Solomon, with 700 wives and 300 concubines. I'm not saying we should be polytheists. Polygamous today. I'm not justifying what some of the Mormons illegally do out west. But when someone says in the Bible, no, the ideal is one man and one woman. The reality in the Bible is a man and sometimes a bunch of women. and it's legitimate in the Bible at that time. They had slavery in the Bible. Anyway, and I'm not trying to say we should go get second or third wives or anything, but just, I was thinking this morning, how much do we believe because someone told us, as opposed to it's really in the Bible? What causes denominationalism is, here's what I believe, so I get millions of people to believe it. Here's what you believe, so you get millions of people to believe it. And they have to believe it if they're going to stay in that church, especially if they want to become ministers, ordained. That's our problem. We're not thinking for ourselves. We're thinking, what's going to keep me in this denomination? How am I going to become a church member? And that's what all the confusion's about. Well, plus people not understanding a lot about the Bible. But anyway, off my soapbox, let's see. And actually, it's part of the sermon. And all the men of Shechem gathered together. And he went to his father's house in Ophrah and slew his brethren, the sons of Jerubbaal, being 70 persons, upon one stone. Notwithstanding, yet Yotam, the youngest son of Jerubbaal, was left, for he hid himself. Okay, that's cool. Anyone see it? Does this bring back to your memory anything that you might see that you might remember from the Bible that actually happens later on? Queen Athaliah of Judah slays the people who, the royal seed. Joash is hidden by a nurse, and he becomes king, and then she's killed. So if it kind of jogs your memory, it's not really the only time this has happened. He survives. And all the men of Shechem gathered together in all the house of Milo, and went and made Avimelech by the plain of the pillar that was in Shechem. Now here you got Milo, and here you got Shechem. Apparently it's the same place. It's also called the house of Milo, Bet Milo. Let's say, Yotam means perfection of Jehovah. Shechem means shoulder. Now Milo might be a rampart. Bet Milo, house of Milo, means, when you look this up, you get different opinions as to what it is. House of fullness. But Bet Milo is Shechem. It's just a different name for it. So you're really not looking at two completely different cities. Shechem was in the territory of Ephraim. It was made a city of refuge and assigned to the Kohathite Levites. See that? Joshua 20 verse 7 and Joshua 21:21. In other words, there were 6 cities of refuge for a person who committed manslaughter. Wasn't out to murder somebody, it's just something happened. So he could flee to the city of refuge. And he was, if the judges could say, okay, it was an accident, you couldn't touch him. But he was not to leave that city, and he was free after the death of the high priest, which makes me wonder what the high priest felt like. Man, some wife's going to hire a contract killer to kill me so her husband can get out of the city of refuge. You ever think of that? But there were 3 east of Jordan in the land of Manasseh, Ephraim, Reuben, Gad, and half the tribe of Manasseh said, we don't want to go over and inherit that land. We got cattle. This land here, east of Jordan, is good for cattle. Moses was wroth. Moses said, fine. You go in, you fight, and with your brethren. After that's over, you can come back. And that's just what they did. So there was 1 city in each of those tribes east of Jordan, and also 3 cities west of Jordan. 6 cities of refuge, plus 42 Levitical cities, totaling 48 Levitical cities. You see that later. Actually, no, you see that earlier. Joshua was before Judges. And the Levites that were descended from Kohath, they were, they were in charge of that area. Now, and when they told it to Yotam, he went and stood in the top of Mount Gerizim. Mount Gerizim, they actually still have sacrifices there. There's a cult, a small cult called the Samaritans. I've seen this in National Geographic. I think Tim might have seen it. They actually go sacrificing. They don't have a temple there anymore. John Hyrcanus I destroyed their temple in the 2nd century BC. But they'll still have sacrifices. And lifted up his voice and cried and said unto them, Hearken unto me, you men of Shechem, that God may hearken unto you. Okay. How do you get on top of a mountain without PA systems and have everybody hear you? I'll mention a few things. I was in the Boston Common back in my Bible school days. We would, pass out tracts. It was called a Blitz, taking a line, I guess, from the German Blitz. You pass out tracts. You usually get the chief of police's permission. You know his name in case anyone asks you. This is in America. We have freedom. You pass out tracts and try to evangelize, maybe have a meeting that night. In Boston, that was the other side of the state from our Bible school, so we had a meeting that evening in a church led by a guy who used to be my head of residence in Bible school, the dorm captain. He had a church there. Anyway, I'm sitting in the grass, and it's a nice day. Boston Common in the summer is beautiful. In the winter, the wind blows off the water, and you got wind tunnels because of the skyscrapers, and you think you're going to die out there. It's beautiful in the summer. You got on the swan boats and stuff. And all of a sudden, I hear this guy preaching like he's right here, and he's way over there. He was a pastor that owned a couple of nursing homes. I'm going by what I've been told. I've learned, facts sometimes you prod a little deeper. They're not exactly like you heard. He would come to our church in Brockton, Massachusetts, and preach every now and then. And he had such a booming voice with no PA system, it was like he was right here. It was way over there. In English class in high school, we learned Shakespearean orators had to learn to make their voices carry. You can train to do that. These days, we just flip a switch, and here we go. It's all amplified. Jesus would preach at a time when the onshore breeze was blowing. Okay? So it carried his voice. If you ever go high up into the mountains and try to talk, it's not as loud because sound is carried through a medium such as air, and when the air is thinner, it's not as loud. So I'm talking to you way up in the mountains. It's not going to be as loud. The voice carries with the wind. People had ways of doing this. And they were trained in it if need be. They didn't rely on electronics like us. Anyway, voice can really, in that particular area, the voice, because of where it was, the voice could really carry. Okay, Yotam's parable, and this is a parable in the Old Testament. You don't usually have parables in the Old Testament. This is a parable. It was spoken from the cliff off Gerizim, overhanging the town. Now, we're running out of time. I don't want to start this parable and explain it because I won't finish it in time. So, let's see. 21 plus 7 is 28. May 28th. We will pick up on verse 8 next time. But do you see what's going on here? Gideon, that hero, he doesn't want to be king, but he acts like one. He's got one, not really illegitimate son. It's sort of. Son of a concubine, maybe illegitimate. Depends how you want to look at it, I guess. And this guy wants control instead of the other 70. And he's got the ears of those people. And he gets most of them killed, but one manages to escape. And this one's going up there where he can scream and people can hear him. And he's going to have a parable. And it's 10:32, so Father, do give us a good week. In Jesus' name, amen.